No, I'm looking.
Okay.
I'm
Y'all are
looking
live.
at this.
Madam Mayor, it's 6 o'clock and we're now live.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this Tuesday, September 1st, regular City Commission meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mayor Pam Triolo,
Here.
Vice Mayor Andy Amoroso,
Here.
Commissioner Scott Maxwell,
Here.
Commissioner Omari Hardy,
Here.
Commissioner Herman Robinson.
Here.
Thank you.
We'll start first with the invocation led by Commissioner Hardy.
Dear Lord, we seek blessings on the tasks before us. Bless our efforts with clear insight, our deliberations with wisdom, our work with clarity and accuracy, and our decisions with impartiality.
Thank you. Commissioner Maxwell, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and
justice for all. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We'll move on to additions, deletions, or reordering. Madam Clerk, do you have anything?
I have nothing, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so we'll move right on to Commission Liaison reports and comments, starting with Commissioner Robinson. You want to get us started?
Fine, thank you. I wish your father good health in the future. I'm glad to hear he's doing well.
Thanks.
And Pelican Pete is recuperating with one heart at least. I hope it's a big heart. And I wish the parents of all the students going back to school virtually the best, and the students as well, to stay healthy and learn by doing. And I want to wish Georgette a happy birthday with that massive ring that she got from Commissioner Hardy. And look forward to the night's important meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hardy?
Thank you. First off, thanks, Herman. I did get engaged last week, very happily engaged, and I am thankful to Georgette, who's probably watching this, for saying yes. Lots have happened since the last time we had a regular meeting. I was fortunate enough to win a primary election that pretty much creates the opportunity for me to serve Lake Worth in the Florida House of Representatives. I'm humbled by the fact that I was elected in that primary. I still have a general to go, but it's dawning on me that in a state of 21 million people, there are 120 people who have the opportunity to serve in the Florida House, and the responsibilities associated with that. Obviously, they're not lost on me. So, I just want to thank all the voters in Lake Worth who participated. It's my job to represent all of you as I have here in the city, and I'm looking forward to doing that in the Florida House very shortly. Today is an important day. I don't want to speak ahead of the agenda, but I'm very keen to jump into these issues here, and I look forward to that discussion. So with that said, those are my comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Maxwell?
I have nothing for this evening. I'm anxious to get into the conversation.
Okay, Vice Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. A lot going on. Big thank you and congratulations to the CRA. They actually got 3 awards for their Day of the Dead event. Sean Moss actually got photo. So congratulations to the CRA. A lot going on with food distribution. We're still doing at least 700 families on Tuesday mornings. We did that this morning. I want to thank all our school teachers that came out and participated and now have gone back to teaching. So we still need volunteers out there every Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. But I want to thank all the other volunteers that come out every Tuesday morning and donate their time for 2 to 3 hours Also, a big thank you to Larry and the parking division for coming out, and all the staff, Jamie's crew, Emmerich and Josue. They're out there every Tuesday morning. It's very, very hot by 11 a.m. And they're out there in the hot sun distributing food. I'm still doing 1,300 meals, prepared meals a week. A big thank you to Bucan and Grotto Restaurant for preparing those meals. And, you know, people keep saying, how long are you going to do it? We're going to do it as long as people need food. And, you know, right now we don't see that slowing down. So we'll continue to do that. I think that's all I've got at the moment, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to thank Patrick Livingston again for the
Absolutely.
opportunity after we did that, the presentation to him and declaration for him. I wanted to personally bring it down to Arms of Hope and make sure he had it in his hands. He's providing so many meals and so much food in our south end of the city that it is incredible. His, of course, increase has been tremendous because it's of the pandemic and so many people out of work. So I just want to send out my love to him as always, and for him to know that we're always there to help him too. Also want to remind you, we have this week's testing. If you or know anybody that is in need of testing or feeling any symptoms, we have testing tomorrow at Sunset Ridge Park from 11 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. That's tomorrow. Also, we've got a Labor Day weekend coming up. I want to remind everyone that, you know, I know you hear it before, and I'm not trying to be your mom, but you got to keep that social distancing going. You got to keep those masks going. You've got to be careful, folks. I know it's the holiday weekend, but, you know, remember that it doesn't go away, and it's not gone. We're still dealing with, we still have many cases. I know everyone's excited that they're talking about phase 2, but it doesn't mean we're over it yet. And we don't need anything to set us back. So be careful over the long holiday weekend. The beach is, I believe, the last thing I got was the beach is open for Labor Day.
Yes.
So we're not going to be closed. I know some people have closed down the beaches. We will be open for Labor Day weekend, and the beach complex will be open regular hours. Again, all the restaurants and dining options are 6 feet or more apart. And again, remember, on the beach, spread out, bring your masks when you're going to and from, and bring out that hand sanitizer and whatnot too. Sorry, folks. I know I sound like a broken record, but don't forget it because it's the holiday. All right, that's enough. Do I have everything? Oh, I almost forgot. Brian Park invited me to be a part of the meeting that they had with the Gulfstream Hotel people. And that was very exciting. Commissioner Robinson, you were there as well. I wanted to thank them, the Gills, for being so open and wanting to reach out to the community that they will directly be a part of the second that they get renovating. So just start talking with people and the citizens in that part of the community, let them know what to expect, what to anticipate, and talk about the impact on their community. Really Class A people. They're doing so much in their home state for people that work for them in the hotels. As you can imagine, hotels and hospitality have been greatly impacted by COVID. And meanwhile, they're feeding their employees and their competitors' employees through this craziness. So they're real hometown people that give a darn about the communities that they live and work in. So we're very proud that we're going to be forging a relationship with them, and that should do it. So we shall move on to public participation of non-agenda items and consent agenda items. So these are items that are not on the agenda tonight, but people would like to speak about, and our city clerk will read them. Thank you, city clerk. You're muted.
Our first comment is from Ali Akupaman, 717 North Ocean Breeze. As a longtime resident, I'm against an increase of STR eligible properties in the historic part of Lake Worth Beach. Airbnb STR rentals introduce a disturbing element into stable neighborhoods when their numbers become prominent and rules regarding noise and safety become compromised. I beseech our city leaders to show care and consideration for the integrity of the historic community and put a freeze on permits for STRs, and most importantly, pass guidelines to hold STRs to strict rules regarding the behavior of their customers with meaningful financial penalties and associated fees. There's a comment from Mark Deming. at 1808 North Ocean Breeze, Airbnbs at 1810 North Ocean Breeze. The neighbors that are around this property are wanting the city to revoke the rental license for this address. There has been nonstop rentals, even when Palm Beach County had stopped their use from all over the United States, as well as from some other countries. They haven't self-quarantined and disturbed our neighborhood with noise, parties, and a large number of cars parked on the street. If you check the police reports, you'll see a number of calls from our neighbors about this address. We would like to have our residential neighborhood back. I've written the commissioners about the issues earlier this year. Full-time residents need your help in this matter. Thank you in advance for that help, Mark Deming. The next one is from Krista Richel, 1828 North Ocean Breeze. I reside with my parents next door to an Airbnb with an address of 1810 North Ocean Breeze. The host has been operating on an expired license over 12 months, but has continued to rent out regardless of the pandemic, continuous parties, yelling, putting trash not only in my yard, but lining the street with it. No matter how many times cops are called, they can't do anything, and city ordinance is too overwhelmed. And the same answer I always get is our hands are tied. My father, who had a stroke, doesn't even want to do his pool therapy because of the Airbnb is such a nuisance. I voted for all the commissioners present in office today, so I'm looking for a solution. Why is that property not shut down yet? Especially when they're not even being cited for not having a legal operating occupancy license. I've lived here all my life in the same house and refuse to be driven out by people whom we don't even know and can't even have the decency to remain respectful. This is not Disney World, and I feel like I'm living in Lake Lawless all over again. The true question is, do you live next door to an Airbnb? Thank you, Krista Rachel. The next is from Leanne Fisher at 1827 North Ocean Breeze. In regards to 1810 North Ocean Breeze, which is an Airbnb, this is nothing but a revolving door of drug haven, loud music, cursing, and parties all day, all night long too. Too many cars, limited parking, people drunk and high, falling into others' yards. Garbage is always put out on days before it's scheduled. The police have been called many times. They do nothing. So we are having to photo and video the violations. After investigating, come to find out that 1810 has an invalid permit. I worked all my life to pay off my house. Now finally retired, I'm living across from a commercial party house. The family living next door to 1810 are in tears 24/7 and living in hell. Please do not renew the permit coming up. I want to be able to live as well as all of you on the commission, as you don't have one next to you. Thank you, Leanne Fisher. The next is from Allison Knoller, 1601 North M Street. The city has limited resources and isn't able to control expired license plate tags. Where is the funding going to come from to ensure that properties being rented are paying taxes? How can this even be monitored? All an owner needs to do is delist the property and continue to SDR. This brings extra baggage and noise control to residential neighborhoods. STR during the COVID ban is still continued. Nothing was ever done about complaints. How can the city control the influx of STRs and keep our neighborhoods safe, clean, and respectful to neighbors? There are enough illegal STR rentals now. You open Pandora's box. This will be free for all and a moneymaker for property owners, but not to Lake Worth Beach coffers. The next is from Maureen Molinex. I apologize if I missaid your name. STRs are running in our neighborhoods. We moved to Lake Worth Beach from the So-So neighborhood 10 years ago when we retired. My husband and I love our street, neighbors, and our town. We purchased our home and began making it our own. We've spent time and money improving it. We now have a VRBO next door. Different strangers move in and out continually. We no longer feel safe in our little piece of paradise. We're now talking of moving. There needs to be rules governing STR. We have 2 on our street and another just 2 houses away across Federal Highway. Help, regulate the density, make some rules or close them all down.
Her address was?
I'm sorry, I apologize. Her address is 182 Vassar Drive. This next one is from Dustin Zacks, 216 North Federal Highway. Given that Scott Maxwell tweeted during one of his re-election campaigns about the need for fiscal responsibility, and given his long and impressive history of making sure the previous majority didn't spend us into oblivion, would he now care to explain to the community why he, our town's fiercest budget hawk, refuses to allow the possibility of saving taxpayers even a single dollar on our sheriff's budget? Given that the sheriff has made headlines in the last few weeks for misspending civil forfeiture funds on luxury office space, wouldn't this be an opportune time for Scott to prove his budget hawk bona fides yet again and save our town some money during this time of financial crisis? The next one is from Patty Schultz, 25 Harvard Drive. To our mayor and commissioners, regarding legalizing vacation rentals in Lake Worth Beach, why would you be discussing this in the midst of a deadly pandemic and without focusing first and foremost on what's best for our permanent residents? I've heard over 700 in the city now. Our downtown businesses and local merchants won't benefit from legalizing this. They've been reaping the economic benefit of them all along because, as most everyone knows, the city doesn't enforce the ban on them. It's not a valid argument in support of legalizing them. Many, if not most, vacation rental owners don't live on site. Many don't live in Lake Worth Beach. They're out of towners. Some live out of the country. It's strictly a business, a motel in the middle of a residential neighborhood. If a resident has a problem with one near them, whether it's a vacationer's loud noise and/or parties, too many renters there at a time, parking issues, or the myriad of other problems, there's no one to talk over with or to get any relief. It is not like having a regular neighbor. Police don't want to deal with this, especially if it's at the same address repeatedly. They commonly say it's a civil matter or code enforcement who is short-staffed, and they're only there Monday through Friday. Even if code wants to help, parens they normally do not, end parens, it takes months, and now, because of the pandemic, they won't go into these nuisance homes. It's a completely helpless and ineffective system for what you're thinking of doing. Residents who never experienced this cannot comprehend how life-changing and debilitating it can be. People have no choice but to move. Word gets around fast, and in time, the new residents will stop moving in. Homebuyers are no longer naive to this. When families are considering a specific home to purchase, they check the nearby Airbnbs. Some even look at local laws regulating them. The Lake Worth Beach has to be secure and successful. We need more permanent full-time residents, not investor-owned rentals. Please focus on increasing the quality of life in Lake Worth Beach. Don't ignore that by haphazardly legalizing all these investor-owned properties. The only way this could be manageable is for our city to have strong regulations in place to quickly and effectively go after bad vacation rental owners, not only to force them to financially control their guest behavior, but to regulate the investors who frequently seek to illegally maximize their profits. In Lake Worth, they're converting garages into bedrooms, putting 3 bedrooms into 1 bedroom, and also beds in the living area, while having inadequate parking for the excessive number of guests. A 3-bedroom unit shouldn't be allowed to have 10 guests, but they do. We don't have the money nor the manpower now that's necessary to control this industry in our city. It goes on a little longer than that, but I think her 3 minutes are up, and I'm sorry. This next one is from Shanna Lillis at 1027 South Palmway. I am writing in support of a contract with Real. Systemic racism has plagued our country since its beginning. Through the years, progress has been made, but the disparities of wealth and access to resources. Oh, I'm sorry. It's an item new business A. I apologize. Sorry.
Got it.
That's all.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes, please.
So moved.
Second? Second? It's the minutes.
Second.
There you go. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Consent agenda? Looking for said motion.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
There you go. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to new business. This is an agreement. This is item A, agreement with National League of Cities for services related to the Race, Equity, and Leadership Real Program.
Motion to approve.
Second, okay, I've got a motion from the Vice Mayor, seconded by the Vice Mayor Pro Tem. And City Manager? I didn't know if we have, I see we have people here.
Hi, Matt.
Going to be speaking.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Madam Mayor and the Commission, we do have representatives from REAL and the National League of Cities. If you want to see a brief presentation, that's your call.
Yeah, I would love to.
Okay. I think what I'll do is introduce Clarence Anthony. For those of you who don't know Clarence, he's homegrown from Palm Beach County, but he now serves as the executive director for the National League of Cities. And with him, he also has some key staff who run the REAL program, Leanne Andrews, who's the overall director, Rita Oslinski, who is the program director. And I see Shantae Byers. I got the chance to meet her this week, who also works at the program. And all of them, we've spent some time together with staff talking and going over what they can do to bring to the city of Lake Worth Beach. So I won't do any more introduction other than to recognize Clarence and let him do the opener.
Thank you, Clarence. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the City Commission. And thank you for the opportunity to provide the National League of Cities, which represent all the cities, towns, and villages in America, a proposal to address the issue of race and racism in the city of Lake Worth Beach. I want to be able to present to you and say that this is not new to the National League of Cities. We created the Race, Equity, and Leadership program over 5 years ago in response to concerns that municipal officials wanted to address this issue directly. But what we found was that the service that we needed to provide was that of training, education, and support. And that's what the National League of Cities does. We work with our city leaders to address tough issues that they are facing. I must tell you, I'm honored to also be a part of this process because, as Michael said, this is my county. I grew up in Belle Glade and went to college right there at Palm Beach Community College, right down the street from City Hall. And you guys got one of the most beautiful cities. And I know the Gulfstream Hotel, and I've been waiting on it to come back one day and be a vibrant part of the community, but the arts and the culture that you have. And part of it is embracing culture and embracing everyone. And that's what we want to talk about today. With that, I'm going to introduce Leanne Andrews, who is our director of our Race, Equity, and Leadership program, as we affectionately refer to it as REAL, to take you through our process and expected outcomes of the proposal. With that, Leanne, and thank you again, Mayor and members of the Commission.
Thank you. Welcome back, Leon.
Great. Thank you, Clarence. Hello, Mayor and Commissioners. Great to be with you again, and good to see everyone again virtually. I wanted to take the moment just to walk through some of the key components of the scope of services, just to give you some key highlights and to see if you have any questions. I'm going to share my screen. Let me just check. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
All right, so wanted to just, again, as a quick reminder, you heard from Clarence, our mission is when REAL was created over 5 years ago, is to strengthen local leaders' knowledge and capacity to eliminate racial disparities, heal racial tensions, divisions, and build more equitable communities. And as you, in the last 5 years, we have been now in over 400 cities, towns, and villages, providing a range of services and networking, and engaged over 700 city leaders across this country. And again, this is cities of all sizes, large, small, and in between. And just wanted to kind of lay that foundation as we talk about the range of services that we've been discussing with the Lake Worth Beach team. And so the 4 components we have talked about fall into these areas around assessments, providing racial equity training, community conversations, and strategic plan recommendations. And so for this scope, I'm going to highlight what the assessments could look like potentially in future phases. But for this first phase, we've discussed not moving forward with any particular assessments. But when we talk about assessments, there were a range of places we did talk about, and places where we work with other cities on. And the assessments are kind of fall into these 4 categories. There is a staff assessment, surveying of staff, how they understand issues of racial equity. There is a data governance assessment is another type of assessment we do, which is understanding how cities are collecting and disaggregating data. There's also agency level assessment or department level, institutional level assessment about where cities are in their efforts to center racial equity in each of their departments. And then there's also a community or stakeholder assessment. And so we talked about each of these. These could be areas of assessments that are identified as part of phase 1. As we do the assessments, just want you to, as we work with cities on assessments, there are a range of kind of protocols that we use. There are sample questions that we serve as a foundation for designing the assessments. Our process is very much, it's co-designing. So we don't come in and say, here's exactly what you need to do, but we try to offer the best of what we've been seeing in the work that we've done, and try to work with a core team within the city, as we've started to have those conversations already with a number of members of the team about what works for Lake Worth Beach. And so that will be kind of a consistent process as we start to, if we start to think about the assessment work, if there's interest for future phases. But what we have talked about for this contract is to at least start some racial equity training. We offer a range of training. The one that we have talked about for this first phase is a Real 100 training. Within our Real 100 training, it's really focused on normalizing kind of really talking about the work that needs to be done to establish a shared understanding, shared analysis, shared urgency around advancing racial equity. What does that look like? But we do offer other training series that we have talked about, but potentially for future phases. And so what I wanted to be able to share is just really the framework that we use in our training. Really is organized, and when we were with you the last time, really spent a lot more time talking about each of these components around normalizing, operationalizing, and organizing. That serves as a foundation for the design of all of the training as we go deep into each of those components. And so it's within that framework. It's what's also very important for us as we do training is really setting kind of a learning environment that we think is super critical for being able to provide effective training, whether it's virtual or in-person training. And so wanted to kind of give you just a flavor of what that learning environment standards are, right? Acknowledging that in order to be able to do the training, that there's got to be a commitment to creating a safe space. There is acknowledging the space as creating a safe space, that what is said here stays here, kind of acknowledging the space of the confidentiality of the space, but also recognizing that as folks come together, that there's also places where you're learning. And so what is learned here leaves here. So if you have a light bulb moment, and if there is something that you didn't know, like how are you using that as a way of really sharing with others in your network and in your space? There's no assumption as well as we create these training, as we provide the training, that anyone comes in with a foundational set of knowledge. So we really do encourage folks to start from where you are and really use that as a way for you to grow. And growing also requires a commitment to lean into the uncomfortable, particularly as as you start to engage around topics that you may be less familiar with, or there are things that you didn't realize as you're learning about things that you have questions about. really encouraging folks to, when you start to get in those spaces where it gets uncomfortable, being willing not to disengage at that point, where it's easy to start, checking your emails or being in a space where you're getting disengaging, and that's the time to really engage. And so the leaning into the uncomfortable is so important. And then just being accountable, being present, being engaged completely in the space. And so as facilitators, we just wanted for you to know how important it is for us to set the learning environment in the training that we do, which is something that we will reinforce as part of our training. And then the other thing that we will work at in partnership with the core team is to build out an agenda, right? And particularly now that we're moving into a virtual training, we're moving from kind of a full day training to multi-days. So taking the same 6 hours that we would plan within one full day to then organize it, because it's virtually, over a couple of days. And we have found that to be much more effective, right? In these virtual trainings, allows us to create a lot more interactiveness, allows people to be more attentive and stay attentive for within shorter time blocks. And so that's something that we will work in collaboration with the core team to finalize. And so that normalizing, again, just what really drives the training is committed to creating an agenda in our training that's around a shared analysis and language about racism and equity, and also fostering the urgency of equity to prioritize it in governance. And so we will use that as the foundation for really developing and driving the training. And I just wanted to hit on a couple of other things that as we continue to reinforce the framework, normalizing, operationalizing, and organizing, we also hope within the training to introduce a racial equity tool. What we think as a foundation is, how then do you at least start thinking about how to use a tool if you're going to really be centering racial equity in how city staff are making decisions, and even how you are working with the community. And so we'll wanted to share with you the broad framework, but what we design in the training is really an opportunity for people to start practicing the tool. And what's part of the work that we'll be doing is really centering the voices of the community as part of the community conversations piece, as we work to organize the community conversations. And then as we use the tool, what I wanted to kind of just highlight for you is, like, there's so many different ways as we start to think about next phase of training, of how to really think about using the tool as you look at a range of different policies in your decision-making areas, from looking at complaint-based systems to your contracting policies and procedures, to local fines and fees, to zoning and permitting, to even public and recreational spaces. Understanding kind of so many aspects of the work within local government can be intentional about using a racial equity tool, and really helping city staff and leaders getting comfortable being able to use it, and knowing how to be intentional about how this becomes a part of how we do business within our city. And then the deliverable that we've talked about is creating the space for the community conversations, intentional conversations on race and racism and equity. And so we have started the initial conversations with the core team in the city to really think about kind of how to partner intentionally with the community to make space for the conversations, to create whether a speaker series and supplementing that with some readings and podcasts and videos that will help facilitate the discussions. And so what's critical here in the community conversations is the partnering with a key partner locally to really design something that really allows for authentic or real talk. We refer to it as kind of a real talk, and what does that look like? There's no one size fits all, but there's got to be intentionality about creating the space for the real talk. And so one of the things I want to give a flavor of, an example of a real talk. This is one of the that we had a few years ago. This was the design of it. The reason I wanted to bring it in is to think about, to get a flavor of how do you create the space for designing something locally that's locally driven with local voices, where we're supporting the facilitation of it, thinking about other speakers that could complement kind of what that design would look like. And so want to see we'll play a short clip trying to give you a flavor of that.
Tim, you have written a book about this subject from a different perspective. What are your thoughts, opening thoughts about where we are in America right now?
Well, in the 3 minutes, 3 to 5 that we've been given, I'll do my best to answer it. And I know we're going to get deeper into this conversation as we go, so I'll save some of what I want to talk about for that. But I really appreciate the way that you framed the discussion at the outset, because at least on 2 occasions, I heard you reference something that we really don't do very much in this country, and that is you reference systemic racism, and you referred to it in that way. And I think that's important. In fact, it's critical, not just for the National League of Cities effort, but for our conversation as a country, because too often what we do, and I think we all know this, is we look at racism as that thing that happened in Charleston. That is to say, and when I say that thing that happened, I'm not talking about the generations of institutional racism. I'm talking about the thing that happened this summer. We look at that as racism. We say, well, Dylan Roof walks into a church and massacres 9 people, and the city comes together, and the state comes together, and the country grieves, and that's racism. And then we sort of wash our hands of it because we say, well, thankfully, that doesn't happen every week. That doesn't happen all the time. That's an anomaly. But we have to be prepared to look at racism as something that's far deeper than that, and not about bigotry, not about overt hatred, and not just about that type of random retail violence, because that's retail violence. We got wholesale violence. And by that, I mean, if you're going to understand what happened in Baltimore in the last 6 months, you cannot start with Freddie Gray, and you cannot start even with the police department in Baltimore. You have to start with the fact that that is a community that was wrecked by so-called urban renewal. That was violence. When they come in and they put the interstate through your community and they knock down your business and they knock down your apartments and they make folks huddle into small crowded housing and they essentially lock them in a holding pen. I mean, we talk about housing and education. We talk about neighborhoods as if it's not about racism. We act like folks just ended up where they ended up. But let's be clear, this thing that we in this country call the ghetto, that was created. And it wasn't created by black people, and it wasn't created by poor people. It was created by folks who were usually not black and definitely not poor as a holding pen for the people they didn't want to live amongst them. So we have to be prepared to call that violence. If you don't call zoning laws and redlining violence, even though it does violence, and you don't call it racism, then how are we going to solve that? So I want us to frame this conversation the way that you've done it. And I think that's where we are as a country. We're still stuck in this mode of describing racism as this interpersonal thing rather than understanding it structurally and institutionally. And I think until we get to that place where we can talk about not just that individual cop who does something wrong in the community, which we can see plenty of examples of that, but until we deal with the mentality that says that spatial isolation, segregation, residential isolation, black and brown kids going to schools 12 times more likely to be places of concentrated poverty, that's not an accident. People didn't choose that. And so I think that's where we need to go, is to frame the conversation in a way that reminds us that we're talking about systemic and structural violence. And we can't just talk about the sort of retail level stuff, as important as that is, and as horrific as a hate crime is. To be really honest, at the risk of being hyperbolic, aspects of this country's history have been an intergenerational hate crime against certain people. And that's just the truth. We don't like to use language like that. Sounds un-American, unpatriotic, whatever kind of terminology we use, but that's real. And unless we're prepared to do it that way and have that conversation that way, I'm afraid we'll keep spinning our wheels, coming back, having the same conversations over and over and over again. The reason that low-income black folks were the ones hit hardest in New Orleans was not an accident. And what was stunning to me about it, and I lived there for 10 years, the only people that were shocked by what happened, for the most part, were white folks. Black folks weren't shocked that they got uprooted. They weren't shocked that they got left behind and forgotten. That was the history of that community, right? Urban renewal did that. Interstate highway construction right through the Treme, the oldest free black neighborhood in this country, did that. And so it was just same thing, different day. A little bit more extreme, and the cameras were on, and they made movies about it. But it was the same stuff that had always been happening. So we have to go back to that systemic understanding, which is something I think the movement historically knew, but most of our leaders have sometimes forgotten.
Wow. So we're going to have a real conversation today, aren't we? I think I'm ready.
So what I hope that the video captures is, again, as we start to design the community conversations, what does that, whether we do it in a format where we're bringing in local voices, but you want to create the space for that real talk, very explicit about what's the conversation we really need to have, and really talking about what does it mean as people are naming kind of how racism is playing out within their lives, within their communities. How are we hearing where they're at, where they are making recommendations for government to make structural changes? And so that short clip was a part of a longer real talk conversation that was organized, but being able to design that is something that will do in partnership with the core team and with the community. And then finally, part of this first phase we've talked about is really starting to make recommendations for what will be hopefully future phases, knowing that we're just really beginning to lay a foundation. It's just scratching the surface for this first phase, kind of an initial training, being able to do kind of an initial round of community conversations, but does it start to really lay the foundation for thinking about a more comprehensive racial equity plan, potentially how do you think about a core team infrastructure across the city, or maybe or across the community, or even how does it even align with maybe even the city's next strategic planning efforts, or as you're thinking about where you want this to sit and center. So that set of recommendations will be something that we will offer as our final deliverable. And then within that, as you're thinking about the organizing, which is the final component of our framework, the normalizing, operationalizing, organizing, really thinking about that core team structure and really looking at other models from different size cities that we work with. Again, there's never a one size fits all, but what we do know is that cities that are committed to really for the long term are thinking about some kind of structure and some kind of organizing that's building in accountability and clear plans that show this being embedded across the city. And so our work obviously would be to make recommendations that look at some of those models that could be useful for Lake Worth Beach. And so that's something that we also look forward to be working in partnership with the core team. So I wanted to just give that high level overview, and happy to just acknowledging that a lot of the details around how long, what the details of the design are will be done in partnership with your core team. And so we're not coming with any final set recommendations of here's what the final agenda is, here's what the panel of who's going to be speaking for the community conversations. All those details still need to be done in co-design with your team. But let me pause there just to see if there are any questions.
Thank you, Leon. Do we have anything from your other partners there, Shantae, Rita? No. Okay, Commissioner Robinson.
I just had a quick question. What's the name of Tim's book that he just spoke about?
White Like Me.
Okay,
White Like
thanks.
Me.
And can we provide then a reading list in the future of other suggested readings that the community could take part in?
Yes, we definitely offer some suggested. We have a range. It's not just reading. We have some good podcasts and some good blogs and some other videos that we think are also good in addition to articles and books.
Thank you. You mentioned the core team. Have we established a core team yet? Have you talked, when you mentioned a core team, having met already?
I don't know if Michael, if you would say this is a core team yet. We've talked about creating one. So the core team is maybe a temporary core team until there's an official core team. But as far as I know, nothing has been finalized.
Well, can you give us the names of the temporary core team?
Commissioner, Madam Mayor, yeah, it's basically the group that Leon has been working with has been myself, our Assistant City Manager Juan Ruiz, Lauren Bennett at Leisure Services, and originally on a couple of the calls, Vice Mayor Scott Maxwell had been involved in the conversation, Vice Mayor Pro Tem. But we've been more focused on getting this contract for scope of services to the commission If it's my understanding, Leon, and maybe you can clarify on the initial, the initiation process that you're going to hold with the commission to develop the leadership team and go through that, those would be formalized and discussed and come to some conclusion and direction for staff. So
were there minutes of those meetings?
no, sir. The result of the meeting was this contract coming to you. That's
so you involved the commissioner without, I mean, I can appreciate Commissioner Maxwell's involvement and dedication to the city and bringing in the League of Cities. But I thought we were going to participate as a team, and I just find that a little offensive when I had initiated the conversation about racial equity in June 2nd, and then I haven't had a chance to participate in this temporary core team.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, and I believe it's in reference to the selection process only, City Manager. Is that what you're saying?
Because of Commissioner Maxwell's conversations about proceeding with using the National League of Cities and the REAL program and his relationship with the National League of Cities, he was included in at least one of the meetings. There were several meetings that have taken place with staff. And understand, and Commissioner Robinson, I don't want you to be offended. It was about—
Well, I am, because I mentioned a task force.
I could finish the conversation that we had with the team at REAL was about getting to a workable scope of services based on the direction that I received from the commission, or at least the majority of the commission at the meeting. So it wasn't about actually engaging in doing the REAL program yet. So there'll be a chance to do that.
We don't know what it was about because apparently there are no minutes and nobody else was involved. So.
Ooh, conspiracy. Okay, Commissioner Hardy.
Thank you. I don't know that I would characterize Commissioner Robinson's concerns as conspiratorial. I think his concerns are pretty practical. And I share his concerns, right? So I want to address that. This is the time for questions, not for commentary. So my questions actually are about scope of service. And if we could get into that, when I look at the scope of service for this contract here in front of us, what it looks like is we have this kind of meeting like what we're having now, and the meeting that like what we had a while back. And there's REAL 101, which is more like an overview, like an introduction to this vocabulary, an introduction to these issues from a studied perspective. And then there's a community conversation series, and there's a debrief. And then there is ongoing racial equity consultation, right? So if we could get into kind of what is in 101. I know that you talked about that in your presentation. I'm trying to figure out where the scope of service stops. So what is in 101, and what makes 101 different from say 201, 301, 302, or 400?
Great question. So I'll try to lay out the 101 or the 100 series is primarily focused on the normalizing. I think, Commissioner, where you put your finger on it is a developing some shared analysis. So there is understanding historical context of race and racism, understanding its current implications to how that affects decisions as we understand institutional and structural racism. So there's a lot of history framing, and it's done in an interactive way. So from videos to interacting activities on understanding our city history to reviewing of terminology. So there's a lot of that that's in the foundation of the REAL 101. But then in addition, because it still is a foundational piece, we still introduce some of the other tools that we'll be building on. So we still introduce the racial equity framework. So that the framework that I showed earlier with the 7 components, we go a little bit, at least try to provide some understanding of how that tool can be used, how to start using that tool. So we don't want to just be just about normalizing. We want to give some kind of tools and how to start thinking about organizing within your city. Like, what are ways to start getting organized? So we still go over the operationalizing and organizing, but very little in the Real 101. The Real 200 series is primarily focused on the operationalizing. So how then do you start using the tool? So it's very much at that point, really beginning to think about key issue areas that each agency needs to be looking at, that they need to start learning how to use the tool. So we spend there's some overview at the beginning, because obviously we recognize we should do some overview with the Real one of the foundational, but most of the time is spent on the operational side with the tool. And then the Real 300 series is much more focused on organizing and communicating. How do you start organizing? And the organizing could take on different forms. It could be organizing across the entire city. It could be organizing by each department and agency around, are there going to be some shared citywide racial equity goals that you're setting, and that you want each department to start organizing and essentially developing their racial equity plans around those goals. And then working with each agency to be able to then organize their racial equity plans around whatever the broad racial equity goals are. And so some of that still would be determined because there's never a one size fits all to how cities want to organize their racial equity framework for their work. But the training 100, 200, 300 are very much built around the framework of our normalizing, operationalizing, and organizing.
Thank you. So, would I be wrong? And just if I could kind of understand it, it sounds like to me that the 100 level training is about making sure that we all have the foundation, that we're all in future policy conversations, that we're all reasoning from the same premises, so that we're not starting from different points here and we can't even agree on first principles. That's what the 100 sounds like to me.
That's right.
Kind of helping us conceive of this issue cleanly and appropriately.
That's right. That's correct.
Okay, and it seems to me like the 200 and the 300 are also about incorporating the lessons from level 100, right? But also about making these lessons actionable, right? Putting them into effect, having deep and serious policy conversations using these tools, actually doing the reasoning from these premises which we've laid to the policy conclusions that we would like to make. Is that kind of
that's correct.
Generally the picture? Okay, I appreciate that. And so it was said that there were conversations about how we got to this scope of service with this contract, and I obviously would like us to engage these topics. My concern is where it's really not what's in the scope of service, it's what's not in the scope of service. So if staff can help me understand if what's in this scope of service is the level 100 stuff, how to conceive of these issues, laying a conceptual framework, a foundation. What's not in the scope of services that we've committed to contractually here is the action stuff, the operationalizing, the organizing. And I recognize that, things come first, some things come second, some things come after that. But I wonder why we chose not to include more in the scope of service, why we chose not to commit ourselves to these level 200 and 300 conversations initially. And that question is to staff.
City Manager.
Find my button there. Madam Mayor, Commissioner Hardy, it's a good question. And in the conversations that we had with Leon and the group, we were very focused on developing, as you eloquently put, the initial getting everyone to the same level. So the conversations about Lake Worth's position, its history, and where we want to go was something that would flow, and we would be able to get to some understanding and hopefully some agreement on where we needed to head in the future. The debrief on, the community conversations component, some of the conversations that we had with Leon was about that. I think in the previous conversations, the bottom-up approach of working with a community group. The group that we've been talking to is Healthier Lake Worth. And there has also been some conversations already taking place with some of the different groups. There's a pastors group. There was a group that met a couple of times that did a broadcast, and harvesting actively in the community and developing what that looks like collectively as a commission with real, how that would actually take place and harvest the input, naming and recognizing and acknowledging the things we need to do by the affected minority groups that we're talking about. So that's something that was real important. And those were the two components that we felt were important to include in this initial contract. Whether y'all want to go to further contracts, whether we, at this point, this level of activity generates enough of a package for us to proceed with implementing and resourcing appropriately things to meet the goals and objectives that y'all set forth, or the leadership group that y'all determine sets forth. We think we can accomplish it with these two sets of activities here. It doesn't preclude you from going deeper and further. We also had some conversations about, this has really also been a program that's really gone into bigger cities, much bigger than us. You know, maybe this was one of the smallest cities y'all have done. I don't know, Leon or Clarence, but we felt that this was enough to be standalone, but it didn't preclude it from going further along. And I hope that kind of addresses your question, Commissioner.
Follow up, Madam Mayor.
Yeah.
So was it discussed internally with Commissioner Maxwell, also as a part of this core group, the possibility of including from the start, the finish of this kind of racial equity journey here? I hear very clearly the rationale for including what's included. I did not hear very clearly the rationale for not including what wasn't included.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, City Manager, please continue.
Thank you. Commissioner Hardy, the conversations from Commissioner Maxwell included statements and his proposing the concept to y'all back when it was approved was shared with the real staff. The other conversations with staff about funding, the costs, and what would be the basic sort of entry level, Chevy level program that Real could offer us was something that we did talk about amongst staff in bringing this proposal. If you're stating at this point that it needs to be more beyond what we proposed, I think this is a safe proposal from the staff's perspective to get us to at least a place where we're addressing issues of systemic racism and identifying and listening to community voices. If you want to do the next level up and move into the Cadillac or the Jaguar, I don't know that staff would have an issue with that, but we wanted to fulfill what we had heard was the direction of the commission back when y'all told us to proceed with negotiating with the NLC.
Okay, Commissioner Robinson. You made it.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. I wanted to know if we were going to spend any time tonight deciding who is going to participate in this. I also want to know whether phases 2 and 3, can we assume that there'll be another $20,000 each, session?
Manager?
And, well,
I'm sorry, I was trying to get you an answer on that.
Madam Mayor, tonight is not an active workshop to do any activities, Commissioner Robinson. It is solely to consider the scope of services as laid out by NLC and to approve or disapprove it. The costs, we do not have a proposal on cost for the other, and that would, I would defer to Leon.
Well, then I realize that it's taken us 3 months to get to this point. My interest is in what our next step, when our next step would be, and are we going to include the Hispanic community, the Haitian community? Are we going to include high school, middle school? You know, that's going to be a workshop. I understand justifiably, but I always have a question of when. And 3 months have passed. We have been blessed with the fact that we have a community that we can celebrate the lack of violence that has occurred. I look forward to celebrating that, but we always like to say that mass shootings are not a local issue, but if it happens in our community, it is a local issue. We have been fortunate up to now. I think that if we could set a date for tonight on a workshop of who's going to be included, I think that's a step forward the way we've been going so far.
Hey, I'm ready to step up, and I'm ready to start, doing whatever we need to do, whatever's part of the process. I'm ready. So, I think that we're, the process is going to be, it's going to be difficult, but we're going to involve people in the community to speak up, and we're going to learn a lot, and we're going to have some difficult conversations, and we're going to move forward in a positive direction. I'm really looking forward to that. So if we need to increase, and I've mentioned this before too, if we need to increase and add more modules, please, again, since we're not traveling like we were with the League of Cities and other organizations and a lot of the travel that we've done over the course of the year, I would encourage us to, use some of our travel budget as commissioners to purchase, to move on. Let's start the process and get it moving. And when we feel like we've gotten to a place where we're creating policy and analyzing infrastructure and other things that are creating positive change in our community, let's add. I'm ready. I'm ready to start. I've never been more ready, and I'm looking forward to it. And I'm like everything I've seen so far, spoken with people from some of the cities that you've been a part of and that you've changed lives in. And I'm ready to go, Commissioner Robinson. So I'm with you. Commissioner Hardy.
Thank you, Mike. So are you saying that we did not get a cost estimate from League of Cities Real on level 200, level 300, and so forth?
I believe he asked for an answer from Leon, and Leon didn't get a chance to answer. Leon, did you have a chance?
I'm sorry. I was asking Mike whether we asked, otherwise requested, a cost estimate from Real for levels 200 and 300.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, please, City Manager.
Commissioner Hardy, we had verbal conversation. I did not get one in writing, and that's why I deferred to Leon, because I don't want to mess the numbers up.
Okay.
All right, Commissioner Maxwell.
I just want to thank everybody for the thoughtful comments and questioning, and just wondering if we could go ahead and take that vote so we get started.
Do we have any public comment cards?
I'm sorry.
Hold on one second. I've asked the city clerk if we have any public comment cards.
Madam Mayor, we have one public comment card from Shanna Lillis, 1027 South Palmway. I'm writing in support of a contract with Real. Systemic racism has plagued our country since its beginning. Through the years, progress has been made, but the disparities of wealth and access to resources still very prevalent. Lake Worth is a progressive, diverse city. We have the opportunity to do what's right for those who continue to struggle in our poorer neighborhoods. I think Real will help analyze what changes need to be made structurally to better support those who are the product of generations of systemic oppression. Our commission has dragged their feet too long on enacting change. This is a step in the right direction. Please vote for what's right and not based on your own personal drama with other commission members. This is about the residents of Lake Worth, not about your politics. You were elected to serve the people. Please vote for the people of Lake Worth, most vulnerable and in need of support now more than ever. Thank you. That's the only comment card.
All right, we've got a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Wait.
Aye.
I had my hand up.
Oh, sorry. Commissioner Hardy.
I didn't know that we moved past, the asking questions after the presentation into commentary and into taking votes. So,
All right, well, we're half hour, so, and I hadn't had a chance for everyone to speak yet either.
So, well, all the more reason for us not to take a vote at this time then.
Chose not to.
So look, here's the context for this, right? So, Lake Worth is a town, it's a little over 100 years old, founded by 2 former slaves. Racial zoning was here. We had a Negro district in our town. Redlining was here. That's what that wall is about. It's about a developer needing to build a wall so that he can get FHA financing to build this subdivision. And, frankly, the effects of that are still with us. The traditionally African-American part of town is next to a landfill. That's not happenstance. And where folks were born are where folks are still living. Ask Miss Mary Barnett, right? And so there's a history here that is still alive, and it has momentum and inertia, and we haven't interrupted that with policy to the extent that we should have. And, we got in a city that's 65% non-white, we've had 2 Black elected officials. We've had a handful of Latinx elected officials. And through conversation with pastors in this town and folks on the south side of this town, Black folks in Lake Worth feel marginalized and disenfranchised. They don't feel like they have much to vote for. They don't feel like they have very many reasons to participate in what it is that we're doing. And it's that 2 cities dynamic that is spoken of sometimes by people who are aware of it that I'm referencing here, right? And in recent history, right, there have been attempts by folks on this dais to address issues that bear directly on racial inequity in this city. And the first presentation by Mr. Andrews from Real, there was a conversation about zoning and the impact that zoning has, the disproportionate impact that it has on certain marginalized communities who may lack access to credit and other things, right? That's an issue that I've been tackling pretty strenuously here, or, at least tried to. And, we talk about, I'm glad that we've gotten to the point where we feel that racial equity training is needed, but, this was something that I asked for of our top level staff several years ago. And it was, we didn't have the time to do that, to spend 2 days in a racial equity seminar, right?
Before the commission?
No. I'd like to finish my comments, thank you. And so, and just, recently, we've had George Floyd's killing, and we've had this nationwide response. And, Commissioner Robinson talks about how everything seems like it's national politics until it happens in your community. Commissioner Robinson kind of took the initiative here and attempted to put on our table this idea of a task force, right, that would integrate stakeholders in the community with elected officials like us, and that would integrate us on a level where we could where we could discover and explore these issues together and make decisions together. And the task force was geared around obviously integrating community members, which is one of the reasons why I thought it was dishonest to say that it was a top-down approach, but it was also geared towards action, right? And Commissioner Robinson brought that forward. He had to fight to even get it on the agenda.
Point of order. We have, the only thing we have to vote on is this contract, and we'll be able to get into some of these instances, but we don't need to go backwards over this. And for you to call out people in reference to it. We all wanted to move forwards. Point of ordering, excuse me. We all wanted to have a workshop. We all wanted to bring in a group to deal with this. And the argument was, we didn't want politics to get in the way. We wanted people to talk honestly and openly and choose members of the community, not politicians sitting there talking about it. So we've got basically a contract to vote on. And in most other meetings, I just allow only the item on the agenda. And the item on the agenda is this.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Commissioner Hardy.
I think how we got here is relevant to what we're discussing here.
Well,
right?
It's
certainly relevant to the motion that I'm about to make. And so
we have a motion on the floor in a second.
And there are such things as subsidiary motions to amend, which I'll be making momentarily. So, Madam Mayor, the point is Commissioner Robinson brought forward a task force that was geared towards action while also integrating members of the community. This contract is in front of us because Commissioner Maxwell substituted that plan for this one. And the fear that Commissioner Robinson and I both had, I believe, was that we were not willing to have the uncomfortable conversations about policy making here in the city. I can tell you the fear that I had was that there may have been an appetite by a majority on this commission to have these conversations, to have town halls of a sort, to engage even in racial equity training, but that there was not a hunger among a majority of members on this dais to actually engage in policy making that acknowledges the existence of racial inequity. Excuse me.
Thank you. You're making assumptions. You're making assumptions.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor.
Point of order. You're making assumptions as to what people are thinking, and that's not fair, Commissioner.
I am okay, Madam Mayor.
You're not being fair, Commissioner Hardy.
Okay.
Please, you're assuming and you're accusing people of things, and you do.
I have not accused anyone of anything.
You are. Sorry. Point of order, Commissioner Maxwell. You're up next.
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, but this is becoming.
You're not obeying the rules.
Because you don't like what I'm saying, not necessarily because I'm out of order. Now
no,
look,
you're out of order because
Madam
we're
Mayor,
talking
you
about
are in the majority. You will win tonight. If before you win,
not
you will
about
allow
winning,
the community, and for me to say stuff you don't want to hear, I would appreciate it. I recognize that you don't want to hear certain things.
No, absolutely. Point of order.
Allow me to talk.
Point of order, sir. I'm just gonna keep doing point of order, sir. I'm sorry, point of order. I've asked you to stop.
I'm gonna continue.
Yes, I'm gonna continue to stop because you're yelling at people. You're accusing them.
I'm
of
not yelling at anyone, Madam Mayor. You have interrupted me continually. Madam Mayor, you haven't.
I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Madam Mayor,
would you please go? Thank you very much.
I just wanted to ask Commissioner Hardy to kind of tone down the lecturing a little bit. I think it's unfortunate that he's. I get the impression that he's just
asking me not.
He did not get the. He did not get his way. He didn't get his task force, which was a 90-day plan.
You are making it very.
90-day plan.
One at a time, please.
You're making it difficult.
One at a time, please. I've said Commissioner.
Yes, one at a time,
please. Thank you. Thank you.
I think I've said all I need to say. Can we just call the vote, please?
Excuse me, I have the floor.
Commissioner Hardy, go ahead. If you're just not,
I'm going to make a motion. I'm going to make a motion to add to this contract, basically to amend this, to add to this contract levels 200 and 300. And I believe in the presentation, I saw something about a level 400. I would like those things added to this contract. The reason why I'm making this motion is because there's no trust that we actually want to do stuff. The reason why there's no trust.
Point of order, please.
Is that what point of order is for, madam?
Well, we have again and again. You keep making opinions and accusing people of things that they don't. We have spoken openly. You know, when you first got to City Hall, Commissioner Hardy, I'm the one who told you about Fannie James and the original story of the city. You hadn't met with Ted Brownstein yet. You hadn't even been to the south end of the city. You didn't know anything about it. And you know what I mean? We have been dealing with the visioning session for this city. We created $16 million worth of improvements and infrastructure that needs to still be addressed, and improving neighborhoods and improving the lives of people in this community that were completely underserved for decades. You know, and you sit there and you accuse people of feeling a certain way and saying things when we have publicly stated the passion we have for coming together and creating a task force. And just because you say we don't isn't the truth, because we have publicly stated we did not. We voted for a task force that was going to be open-minded and had. Please, I have the floor, sir. I have the floor, sir. I have the floor, just like you asked for the floor. You can't. You can't make different rules. You can't make different rules. You can't, sir. I mean, you sit there and accuse people of things when we have publicly stated, and we can pull up minutes over the course of almost a decade where we have cried out for things in our community, and where people, where they've been solved, where they still need to work on. And do I think that I should be the person that I'm allowed to speak to? I've been quiet this whole meeting. You pretty much run the meeting like you always do, sir.
I didn't.
You interrupt everybody. You really do.
I simply took the floor when I had.
All I'm asking you.
And you didn't like what I was.
No, because you're accusing people of not wanting to create a task force, and that is incorrect.
Address.
You are completely stating
address
that,
it
and it's not.
Time.
Okay, what would you? I'm going to give you the floor, Commissioner Hardy, but you can't keep doing this. You refuse to follow the rules.
Madam.
You put words in people's mouths, and you lie outrightly.
Madam,
which I can prove everything that you say. I can prove you are incorrect.
Oh my gosh, Madam Mayor.
Now you know how it feels.
Madam Mayor, look, hey.
Yes, sir, please.
Look. Here's what I'll say, Madam. If you believe that I've said something untrue,
yes,
you can address that on your time. If you believe that I am unfairly characterizing your positions in debate, which is, by the way, what happens in a debate. You characterize your opponent's positions.
But you wait to be recognized.
If you feel that I've done so unfairly,
yes,
when it's your turn to debate, feel free to engage and say that, hey, I built a straw man.
This is not a debate.
If you
this is some college debate.
I don't know what versions of Robert's rules you read, but after a motion is made and is seconded, what follows is called debate, sir.
You have exceeded.
One at a time, please. One at a time. Point of order. Point of order. Point of order. You know what? In all,
Madam Mayor, you said you would give me the floor.
You've had the floor.
Stop arguing with other people. Thank you, Commissioner Maxwell, please.
I just like this.
He won't give us the courtesy of having the floor, but we'll give it to him. Thank you.
Look, I'm going to make a subsidiary motion to amend this.
I've already asked for
levels 200 and 300, and I wonder if Commissioner Robinson will second that. This has to be about action. It can't just be about talk.
Okay. Subsidiary motion made. Commissioner Robinson, he's asked you specifically, which I think is strange. But go ahead.
May I speak?
You have to make the second. We're waiting for a second. You can't speak before the second.
Well, I wanted to make an amendment to this contract that it doesn't extend until June of next year. That concerns me. We've spent 3 months getting to this point. We're going to spend the next, how many, more than a half a year, 9 months. Somebody's pregnant here and, just more than a little bit. I am not comfortable with signing a contract that extends this conversation until June. I am very much, I'm looking forward to Rachel, the League of Cities helping us with a conversation. I'm looking forward to it, want to vote for it. I don't want it to be dragged out until June of next year. And Commissioner Maxwell, I'm sorry, if you don't understand that that was, that task force came from my little initiative, I'm sorry, but it did. And it's unfortunate that we quickly went past that, because I heard tonight that we were in favor of it, but then where did it go? So
I think basically the only thing that nobody was in favor of was in solving racial inequity in a 3-month time period. so a member could go on and move on to another office.
We weren't going to solve that.
That's what we were arguing about.
Madam Mayor,
You can't solve racial inequity in a time
if you want to talk about allegations, if you want to talk about allegations, that was one. And
There you
so
go. Commissioner Maxwell, I'm gone from the floor. Commissioner Maxwell, you're up.
Madam Mayor, I think we need to move on. I don't want to
I
sit.
do too. I've been trying to for a while.
I really think it's inappropriate for one or more of us to sit here and try to sabotage this contract.
point of order.
All right, we're gonna have, I'm going to vote right now because
Point of
we have
order.
a subsidiary motion on the floor. I'm running this meeting.
No way was I trying to sabotage.
We have a subsidiary motion on the floor and you're looking for a second. Do we have a second for his
What's the
subsidiary
motion on the floor? What's the
Yours
motion
is
on
the
floor?
subsidiary motion. It must be voted on first, right, Christie?
Yes,
Subsidiary motion.
What's
Thank
the
you.
motion on the floor?
It's yours,
Commissioner
sir.
Hardy made a motion to amend the contract to add item 200 and 300.
I will add to that to shorten the length of the contract to January 1st.
Madam Mayor,
Well, yes, city manager.
I'm not exactly sure what, let me just ask this question. If it's being amended to shorten, I think we should defer to the real team to find out if that's a
I'm
possibility.
not shortening this.
Please.
The process should take as long as it takes.
Exactly. It's not an event, it's a process.
Thank you.
Madam
We don't set the timeline. They do.
That's right. The community sets the timeline.
That's why I don't want us to be politicians to be involved in this process.
Point of
Madam
information.
Mayor, Madam
We've got a
Mayor.
motion. I know, I need a second on the motion.
Okay.
Point of information.
We
There is
can't
no
debate
second.
until I have a second on the motion, please.
There is no second.
Point
no
of
second.
information.
Motion fails for lack of a second. Point of information. Go ahead, Commissioner Hardy.
I was going to ask the clerk to read the motion as I amended it, but that's, that's fine. Look, y'all put this out just past your reelection. And, there's nothing, there's literally nothing in here about
That
action.
is completely out of line. Thank you, sir. But-
You literally, you literally cast aspersions on my
All
motives
right, we're done.
because I was running
Thank
for
you.
office.
Commissioner Maxwell, you go.
No, I'm just still waiting to vote, Madam Mayor.
You
Here
literally
we go.
just
We've got a motion on the floor and a second. We're going back to the original motion that was made.
I
We've
can't.
got a
pretend.
motion and a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No, because, and not because I
Motion
don't
carries
want a
4-1.
contract with real,
Thank you
but
very much. All right, I'll entertain a
Process
motion
is
to
done.
adjourn, please.
John,
So move second. All those in favor state so by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Good night, everyone. Thank you very much. Real, now you know why we need you. Thank you.
Thank you, Clarence. Thank you, Leon. Thank you, Dante.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.